I was doing that mental attendance check. Yep, all counselors here, staff, good. Yep, we're good. And it's 7 o'clock. Welcome to the public meeting. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to North Dumfries Township Public Planning Meeting. We have 2 statutory public meetings scheduled for this evening's meeting. Members of the public who have registered before the registration deadline for all items have been provided with a link and a telephone number to join the virtual meeting this evening, and have indicated to staff which application they would like to participate in. Staff will move these individuals who have registered into the meeting to speak in the order of the application being heard. It is due to COVID-19 and recommendations by Waterloo Region Public Health to exercise social distancing and public gathering thresholds. Township public meetings are currently being held by teleconference. Members of the public have been provided with the following methods to watch and participate in this open meeting electronically. You can either watch the live stream by accessing the meeting through the township's website. You do not need a YouTube account to watch the live stream. You cannot directly participate in the meeting via the live stream, as this is for viewing only. Members of the public who were interested in attending as a observer or wish to speak to an item were to submit the request in writing to the Clerk's Division before 7 p.m. on June 28th. A link and a telephone number has been provided to those who registered before registration deadline. Members of the public who wanted to comment on a particular item but were not available to attend the meeting virtually were invited to submit written comments to the Clerk's Division, which would then be provided to Mayor and Council prior to the meeting. I'd now like to call the meeting to order, and can I have approval of the agenda, please?
So moved by Councillor Gillespie and seconded by Councillor Rowland that Council adopt the June 29th, 2021 public meeting agenda as presented, and that all correspondence circulated to Council in advance of this meeting and made available publicly on the Township website will form part of the public record for this meeting of Council. Mayor Foxton?
Yes.
Councillor Rowland?
Yes.
Councillor Osner?
Yes.
Councillor McCreary?
Yes.
Councillor Gillespie?
Yes.
That carries.
Thank you. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interests and general nature thereof? Seeing none, can I have adoption of the minutes of the public meeting of May 26, please?
So moved by Councillor McCreary and seconded by Councillor Osner that Council approve the public meeting minutes dated May 26, 2021. Mayor Foxton?
Yes.
Councillor Rowland?
Yes.
Councillor Osner?
Yes.
Councillor McCreary?
Yes.
Councillor Gillespie?
Yes.
That carries.
Thank you. Public meetings. 6.1 is report number PD 37-2021, proposed temporary use zoning bylaw amendment, file number ZC0421, statutory public meeting for 1580 Edworthy Side Road. In accordance to the Planning Act, notice has been given. The clerk will record everyone who has commented on this application, attended and/or have registered with the Clerk's Division to attend the meeting this evening. Those individuals will be notified of the decision or the convening of future meetings. I'd like to introduce Shahid Magal, Township Planner, who will be presenting this application.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and Council and Administration. Tonight I will be presenting the zoning bylaw amendment application ZC04, which is located at the 1580 Edworthy Side Road. So the purpose of this application is to propose a temporary use zoning bylaw to facilitate the parking of tractor trailers and occasional use of existing shed and former barn for storage of goods and material on the property, which is located at the 1580 Edworthy Side Road. The purpose of this statutory public meeting is to provide an overview of the proposed zoning bylaw amendment, solicit comment from the interested member of the public and agencies, and identify issues or matters to be assessed by staff as part of the consideration of the subject proposal. So the subject property is located immediately south of the Dickey 2 settlement area, as you can see on the map. The property is municipally known as 1580 Edward D. Side Road. The property is approximately 10.87 hectare, which is 26.87 acres in size. Previously, the site was operated as an aggregate extraction, and the final rehabilitation of site has been completed as according to the rehabilitation plan. Currently, the subject site contains 6 sheds, a pond, as you can see on the map, and regional police service range for training purposes. And balance of the property is landscape and grass. So as you can see on the map, is WRSP range and the pond and the surrounding land use as well. So the surrounding land uses of the subject property are rural residential, aggregate paid, and agriculture, and industrial uses in nature. As you can see on the map, the east side of the property have Blair Pit, agriculture to the west, zone 3 residential to the north, with exception 20.1.10, which permit indoor storage and services and office use. And as you can see in the southern side of the property, which is agriculture, with the exception 20.1.74, which permit the paving contractor, including the storage of paving equipment. So as you can see, the surrounding land uses are, as I mentioned, agriculture, gravel pit, and industrial uses in nature. The subject property is directly accessed through the Edward D. Side Road, as you can see on the map. Staff reviewed the provincial, regional, and township statutory plan. When we see the section 39 of the Planning Act, that states that the council of the local municipality may, in a bylaw passed under section 34, authorize the temporary use of land, building, or structure for any purpose set out therein that is otherwise prohibited by bylaw. A bylaw authorizing a temporary use under subsection 1 shall define the area to which it applies and specify the period of time for which its authorization shall be in effect, which shall not be exceed 3 years from the day of passing of the bylaw. The council may by bylaw grant further period of not more than 3 years each, during which the temporary use is authorized. When we see the provincial policy statement, that states that providing an opportunity for diversified economic, including maintaining a range and choice of suitable site for employment uses, which support a wide range of economic activity and ancillary uses, and take into account the need for the existing and future businesses. So when we see the regional official plan identify the subject land as a rural area, and the policy 4.3 of the regional official plan state that provide a broad range of accessible employment opportunity throughout Waterloo region and maintain a competitive advantage in attracting and retaining people, jobs, and investment. Following the regional official plan, the township official plan identify the subject land as a rural area. And when we see the policy 2.6.16.1, it says that that the township that bylaw may be passed in accordance with the provisions of the Planning Act to authorize the temporary use of land, building, or structure for the period of time not exceeding 3 years, and to permit such temporary use to continue thereafter for additional period of time, not exceeding 3 years each, as determined by the Township Council, to permit any other uses which Township Council deemed appropriate on a temporary basis. So that's aligned with the Planning Act. As you can see on the zoning bylaw map, the subject property identified as a zone 14 aggregate extraction, and the current zoning provision do not allow the proposed temporary parking and is narrowly restricted to aggregate extraction and ancillary uses. So as you can see in the zoning bylaw map. So let me share the proposed proposed zoning bylaw amendment. The purpose of as I mentioned, the purpose of proposed temporary use bylaw is to facilitate the parking of tractor trailers on the subject property, which you can see on the map with the dotted line, and occasional use of existing shed and former barn of storage of goods and material. So there's if you can see the northern portion of the property along the pond, there's a barn and shed as well. And you can see there's one shed in the middle of the property. This has been proposed to be removed. So the intended use is to support the JBT Transport existing business operation, consisting of shipping and warehousing currently located at different locations at 235 and 195 Wadham Drive. As I mentioned, the subject property is currently zoned as Zone 14, mineral aggregate. The current zone provision do not allow the proposed temporary parking or intended use. So the applicant proposes through the enactment of the temporary zoning bylaw amendment to facilitate the parking of tractor trailers and occasional use of existing shed, which is approximately 600 square meter, and the former barn of storage of goods and materials such as moving equipments and empty drums. The temporary use bylaw, if approved, would have a term up to maximum of 3 years. The owner can seek renewal or extension of the temporary use bylaw in accordance with the applicable provision of the Planning Act, and as I mentioned, according to the township official plan as well. So staff also circulated the notice of a public meeting to adjacent property owner within 120 meter radius. So staff only received one correspondence. The key concern of the adjacent property owner was the noise and the traffic hazard. And they mentioned that we do not think this area needs any more trucks. There's already a high volume of traffic going on in and out of the gravel pits and many vehicles that go by this area every day. They also mentioned the intended use will cause more noise from trucks and beeping into the night as they are backing up. And there are countless accidents in the area, and not to mention the constant honking of truck on a daily basis. So the key concern is like a noise and traffic hazard as well. Staff also circulated the submission package to agencies and department. So the region of Waterloo, Grand River Conservation Authority, Waterloo Catholic District School Board, Waterloo Region District School Board, and the Public Works Department of the Township of North Dumfries expressed no comments and no concern. However, the Public Works Department, they expressed that all entrances will require a permit from the region of Waterloo. So they're suggesting to require the access permit. So the staff, in consideration of the future report on the merit of the application, will be considering a matter including such as correspondence received during the consultation process, the matter, the proposed development on the matter of provincial interest, such as transportation system should be provided, which are safe and facilitate the movement of people and goods, and promoting diversification of economy base, protecting protecting environment and public health and safety, and as I mentioned, the facilitating the economic growth. So staff will also consider whether the proposed development confirm with the provincial, regional, and township statutory plans. Is the proposed development compatible with the adjacent uses and properties and maintain the character of the area? Staff will also consider the suitability of the setback, dimension, and shape of the proposed site will be proposed site, and is the proposed temporary use bylaw suitable for the land subject lands? And the staff will also consider what are the impact of the traffic from the proposed development on the Edwardly side road. So the staff recommending that all comments and correspondence received from the member of the public and government agencies through the consideration process be returned to staff for future report to council on the disposition of this matter. Thanks, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Shahid. Some muted me. Okay. Mr. Jefferson? Steve?
Hello.
There you are. Go ahead, Steve.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor Foxton and members of council. Again, my name is Steve Jefferson, planner with K Smart Associates. I'm joined tonight by my clients, including Dennis Medeiros, John Sousa, and Randy Bowman. So we are all here in case there are questions, and they can help answer any of these questions if necessary. I'd like to thank Township Planner, Mr. McGall, for his presentation and the contents of his report. He's provided a good comprehensive overview of our application and the existing conditions on this site. I think for your information, I would just like to give an update on the public consultation which my clients have undertaken with the area residents. That was led by Dennis Medeiros, and he went door knocking and spoke with as many of his neighbors as possible, including the 4 properties on the south side of Roseville Road, which abut the property. There were 3 other properties on the north side of Roseville Road, and also the property to the south, which fronts onto Edworthy, located at 1520 Edworthy Side Road. So for the properties to the north, Mr. Medeiros explained the proposal and what he would like to see occur on the property, and no one expressed any objection to his proposal as described. So those meetings went very well with the neighbors. There was some discussion about screening and taking care of the site. Some expressed happiness or glad to see that the site was being cleaned up from the leftover time from the previous use. For the landowner to the south at 1520 Edworthy, Mr. Medeiros ended up having 3 separate meetings with that landowner. Her main questions were dealing with the sight lines from the deck on her house. She had a couple of questions about the police service use of the property, and that sometimes it bothers her dogs. But the main, outcome of those meetings was the 3rd time that Dennis was on site, and he attended with an ecologist who we work with, who is providing advice on the buffer adjacent to the pond, and also what type of screening can be provided around the perimeter of the property. The south end of the property, there are a number of existing poplar trees which have grown in, so we intend to use those for screening at both the north and south end of the property. And there were also talks about adding some additional coniferous trees at the south end to help with the screening for that property to the south. So overall, I appreciate the work that Mr. Medeiros did in speaking with his neighbors and giving them a chance to ask all the questions, and I believe that went very well. So we were provided a copy of the email by the township planner this morning that he mentioned for the other resident who has objections about the amount of traffic in the area. I think in response to that, the main intent is that this would be used as a location for parking, and it would not be daily operations with trucks going in and out, comparable to the aggregate operations in the area. So it's my belief that there should be minimal change to the traffic in the neighborhood, and that the activities related to this proposed use should not have any negative impact on the neighbors in terms of the amount of traffic or sound or horns or that sort of thing. With respect to the environmental features on this site, with the screening by the Conservation Authority, there are no natural environmental features of significance. However, as mentioned, we did bring in a sub-consultant, an ecologist who did an evaluation of the site and provided some advice to our clients on how to deal with the tree transplanting, recognizing the existing conditions of the pond and what would be appropriate for a buffer strip around that. We provided details of that in the stormwater management brief that was submitted. One of my co-workers prepared that shortly after the time of the zone change being submitted, and that has been reviewed by the township engineer, and there were no concerns raised with that stormwater management brief at that time. For Just the draft site plan, or the plan from Swim Brief, was shown. In terms of the setbacks for the properties to the north, we are showing a separation of about 74 meters or 240 feet. To the property to the south, we're showing a 30-meter setback or about 100 feet. And the setback from Edworthy Side Road is the same, about 30 meters or about 100 feet. At this time, we are available to take any questions that you have. In terms of timeliness, we thank the township staff for dealing with this from the time of our contact and getting to this point for the public meeting tonight. And we requested, if possible, that a follow-up staff report be prepared for your council meeting in July for consideration of the bylaw. We recognize everyone's busy, but if that could occur, it would be much appreciated by my clients. Thank you.
Ms. Sage, is there any member of the public that wish to speak?
If any of the individuals that were listed on the sheet, if Dennis, Randy, or John are here and wish to speak.
Yeah. Those three are.
Those are with those are the applicants.
Okay. Okay,
Yes.
then that was everybody who registered.
Okay, so councilors, questions, comments? Council McCreary, then Council Rowland.
Thank you, Mayor Foxton. So this property is currently zone -14, I guess, aggregate. So the parking isn't allowed, and we're going with the temporary bylaw. So the parking is allowed. Now, if this is to become permanent, what zoning would we have to have on the property?
CEO McNeely?
Madam Mayor, through to Councillor McCreary, this type of activity is not allowed outside of the settlement area under the current provisions of both the regional official plan and the township official plan. The owner is seeking a temporary use bylaw to allow this on an interim basis until they're able to secure property ownership, either by purchase or lease, at an appropriately zoned or designated property.
May I ask a follow-up question? So you're saying that they're not going to seek using this land permanently, and they're not going to be looking for a permanent zoning change of any sort? It's just going to be temporary?
So
Okay,
Madam-
sorry, it doesn't matter.
No, let CEO McNeely go ahead. CEO McNeely, please.
So Madam Mayor, through to Councillor McCreary, the application before council is for a temporary use bylaw for a period of up to 3 years. The owner is eligible to apply for a renewal or extension to that temporary use bylaw, but the process would require a restart in terms of filing of an application, notice, public meeting like we're having tonight, decision of council. A permanent zone classification based on the current policies of the official plan, township and local and regional, would not allow a permanent zone classification for a designated truck storage, truck terminal type land use activity outside of a settlement boundary.
Margaret, you're on mute.
Okay, so currently our official plan would not allow a permanent industrial expansion on this piece of property, or a new industrial type business to locate on this piece of property. I understand.
That is correct.
Okay, thanks. Thank you.
Councilor Rowland.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My question, I guess, is if this property is zoned Z14 mineral extraction, and now it says in the report from K-Smart that extraction has since ceased on that property and that it has been rehabilitated, I'm curious as to why the zoning has not reverted back to its original zoning of agricultural. That's the first part. And the second part is in the report from K-Smart on page 36 of our agenda, point 3.4, it says the landowners are prepared to participate in discussions regarding the longer term post aggregate use for this site. So that implies, or I'm inferring from that, that they have no intention of reverting it to agricultural, but instead they plan on seeking some sort of permanent new zoning for this property, as Councilor McCreary has sort of indicated as well. So I'm wondering what the process is here. If we have a Z14, it doesn't go back to being agricultural. Instead, we give a temporary use, and then before we know it, they're in front of us for the regional plan saying we already have this temporary use, and now we want to have a different zone attached to this property as opposed to the agricultural, which is what they agreed to in their ARA.
So, Madam Mayor, through to Councillor Roloman, the Z14 provisions do allow as of right agricultural uses. So in this case, related to this property located at 1580 Edworthy Side Road, the aggregate license issued by the Ministry of Natural Resources has been rescinded as the property as related to extraction has ceased. The property was rehabilitated in accordance with the ministry's requirements, and the license was then relinquished. The Z14 provisions, as I mentioned, do allow agricultural uses as a permitted use. The township, when it would go through its cycle of doing a housekeeping amendment, would move this property under normal circumstances to a Z1 classification, consistent with the official plan policies, which would just legitimize, fully recognize exclusively the Z1 uses, even though they are permitted as of right today in the Z14 classification. It just removes the reference to the aggregate, which is now in the rearview mirror. If the owner seeks something that is not in conformance with the current provisions of the official plan, then they would have to go through an official plan amendment and a regional official plan amendment, because the policy documents that are in place today do not allow activities that are not consistent with the rural countryside.
Councillor Gillespie.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I was just wondering, in this report, it says that the land is not any good for agriculture right now because the topsoil has been stripped of it. So I wondered who or how this happened, how the gravel people that took the gravel out obviously sold the topsoil or something, and now it's pretty much a wasteland. It's not really suitable to go back to agriculture. So I wondered how we can stop this from happening in other gravel pit rehabilitation processes.
So, Madam Mayor, through to Councillor Gillespie, this was a very old pit and predated the 1995 amendment to the Aggregate Resources Act. The township, in recent approvals related to aggregate sites, actually has prescribed, and the ministry adopted as conditions to the license, a more gradual transition slope on the side elevations of what will be the extracted pit, to allow for agricultural use through the property from fence line to fence line, as well as requiring a certain prescribed depth of topsoil. So the township has made the adjustment. It's reflected in current licenses because that position was ultimately adopted by the ministry at the request of the township. I am aware of other older properties where tenant farmers are now utilizing it and trying to grow crops. They're finding it difficult because either the property is not properly graded, so they're creating pockets of low wet areas, which, depending upon the year, can be problematic for putting in crops, and or the soil medium has been compacted, and or the topsoil is too thin to support crops, especially in dry, hot years, and it exasperates the issue of not having the proper growing medium for cropping systems. And they're actually starting to talk about can they apply for fill permits to import topsoil so that they can reshape, grade the property and add a better growing medium?
If I may, Councilor McCreary and I walked the property, and there's no way it could be used for farming. In fact, aggregate is right on the surface. It's right there. It's hard land. And it isn't a mess. And the sad thing is that the number of pits in North Dumfries that are dated before the aggregate review, the Aggregate Act is extensive. And a majority of our aggregate licenses are dated pre-1995, which allows for them to basically destroy the land and not have to be rehabilitated. And as CEO McNeely said, they would have to bring fill in just to level the property to make it usable. Mr. Jefferson, you have a comment? Mr. Jefferson?
Okay, yes. Thank you, Mayor Foxton. On those previous couple of questions, why have my clients not rezoned this yet? Well, they only obtained ownership of the property in the second half of last year. So they're just getting into the process of determining the long-term use of the property. So they recognize that it does have the aggregate zoning and that it does need to change in the future, and that is reflected in the comment in my staff report that my clients are wanting to enter into those discussions with the township and the region about what are the long-term opportunities for this property. We recognize that the region is updating their official plan and the township will have their update process as well. So we intend to participate as much as possible to determine if one option is to make this type of logistics use permanent at the site or not. And so that will come out of those separate processes. We view this temporary zoning as what it's called, a temporary step that allows my clients to deal with the lack of industrial land for the trailers, that they have not been successful. And in the interim, during the time period of this temporary zoning, they can have those discussions with both the township and the region and determine what the future path is. And I thank Mr. McNeely for his overview of the changes to the Aggregate Resources Act and the age of the previous license on this pit. The rehabilitation was completed by the previous owner and the license was surrendered prior to the purchase of the lands by my clients. So they are viewing it as their property now, and they want to be part of those discussions on what the future holds for it. Thank you.
Any other questions, councillors? Seeing none, Councillor McCreary, and you've gone past your 3, but we will recognize you again.
I just have a general concern about this situation. As was pointed out, we have a large number of pits in the township that are pre-1995 and that have not been properly rehabilitated. And if we start to set a precedent where these sort of wastelands can't be dealt with in any other way than to be sort of rezoned for some kind of industrial use, we're going to have a problem where we're actually losing our countryside protection. We're going to end up having a lot of industrial expansion in what is supposed to be protected rural countryside. So this is sort of could start a domino effect.
Actually, Councillor McCreary, sorry, I interrupted you. I thought you were done. Carry on.
I was just going to say that this could start a domino effect where poorly rehabilitated or unrehabilitated pits get zoned for first temporary use and then some industrial use, and it would permanently change the rural area of North Dumfries Township. It would just become industrial.
Well, that's already existed and happening. These rules are set out by the province. The province has stipulated we cannot enforce grandfathered pits to follow the rules and regulations. They are exempt. TAPMO has numerous times approached the province on this. And also the abandoned pit basically on Cedar Creek Road behind the old Dickey Settlement School, which is now the church, is also basically left, and any type of periodically industrial business that comes in there and it turns over several times. So basically we're at the whims of the province. They said that this is the rule. We cannot enforce any other rule upon it because they are exempt. That is under the Aggregate Review Act. To respond, Councilor McCreary, go ahead.
No, my comment related to not the rehabilitation of the pit, that's done, but the fact that these pits could be rezoned industrial, and the rezoning is in the jurisdiction of the region of Waterloo and the township. So I'm just saying that this could set a precedent where an unrehabilitated or poorly rehabilitated gravel pit becomes industrial. That's within our control, or the region's control, not the province.
Councillor Rollman.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think I agree with Councillor McCreary on this. The big fear that we have is that these gravel pits will not return to agricultural. I think we're always told every time we go to one of these new open houses for a new gravel pit, they always say to us, don't worry, after 25 years or 10 years or whatever, we're going to restore this back to being agricultural. Boy, it'll be a farm again, just like it used to be. You won't even know the difference. And then fast forward 25 years, oh, there's no topsoil, as Councillor Gillespie pointed out, there's no topsoil, nothing will grow there. So I guess all we can do is turn it into a parking lot for transport trucks. That's not really what we were told. We were told at the beginning by these companies, and that's not what happens. But unfortunately, we're stuck with from basically the Cambridge line all the way down Cedar Creek Road. On both sides are going to be gravel pits, which will be eventually turned into parking lots for trucks. And that's really a sad thing to be facing.
Anything after 1995, which are any of the pits that we have at our council and the last, 20 years, almost 20 years, have fall under the act, and they must be rehabilitated back to aggregate. And there are numerous pits in our township that have done exactly that. Now, a couple of them are working with RARE to create wildlife sanctuaries and rehabilitating in that way. So it is only the pits that predate the 1995 Act, which none of us on council were on council at the time, and none of us have had a say in those. So it is only the older pits, which I still think they should have to follow today's regulations. Mr. Jefferson. Mr. Jefferson?
Yes, thank you. I was just unmuting. I could reinforce your comments about the more recent pits. My experience with pits since 1997 in the township is that the provincial requirements for progressive rehabilitation were imposed and are required to be followed. So not only is the rehabilitation required, but it also minimizes the amount of extraction area which can be operating at any given time. And as an operator moves into a next phase, they must rehabilitate the previous phase as they move through the site. So I do recognize that there are older pits like this that will need to be looked at on a site-by-site basis if another landowner does make a similar request. However, I would just ask that council focus on this particular property tonight and the conditions that we are looking at and the request of my clients for this temporary zoning. If other landowners were to make a request, I'm sure the regional staff and the township staff will look at any proposal for after use of a pit in a comprehensive manner.
Now, if I understand correctly, just give me, sorry guys. If I understand correctly, these are trucks that are going to be, they're not trucks, they will be trailers that'll be put into storage for extended periods of time. Is that correct, Mr. Jefferson?
Yes, yes, it is. It is primarily trailers and maybe some pallets could be stored in the shed that's at the northwest corner of the property.
Okay, if you did do this, would you be going southerly to Cedar Creek Road where there is a light controlling the traffic, or would you be going northerly to Roseville Road?
Yes, from my discussions, the almost all the trucks would be going south down to Cedar Creek and then over to the interchange of the 401. A great majority of the truck movements by JBT are to the west, to the south and west. So, and primarily U.S. markets. So there is some movement into the GTA, but that could also be achieved from Cedar Creek Road and 401 interchange.
Shahid, something I would like to see in your next report is the number of accidents at the intersections, both Cedar Creek and the Roseville Road one. Because if that is a concern, that's something that the township may want to look at regardless of whether this happens or not. Are there any other questions? Seeing none, can I have the motion, please?
So moved by Councillor Ossner and seconded by Councillor Rollman that report PD 37-2021 be received and that all comments and correspondence received through the consultation process be returned to staff for further consideration in a future report to council on the disposition of this matter. Mayor Foxton,
Yes.
Councillor Rollman,
Yes.
Councillor Ossner,
Yes.
Councillor McCreary,
Yes.
Councillor Gillespie,
Yes.
that carries.
Thank you. Now we'll wait for this group to leave and the next to come in.
Oh, you're unmuted. There's your video, so they can see you. And if you want to speak there.
Wait a minute.
Ms. Sage, are we ready?
Yes, everybody's in the meeting.
Thank you. So now we are on report number PD-39-2021, proposed zoning bylaw amendment, file number ZC-02/21, statutory public meeting for 1904 Clyde Road. In accordance with the Planning Act, notice was given. The clerk will record everyone who has commented on this application, attended and or have registered with the clerk's division to attend the meeting this evening. These individuals will be notified of the decision or of convening of future meetings. I'd now like to introduce Shahid Magal, Township Planner, who will be presenting for tonight.
Share it.
Shahid, you're muted.
Yeah, thanks, Madam Mayor. The next presentation I'll be presenting regarding the zoning bylaw amendment application ZC-02/20, which is regarding 1904 Clyde Road property. So just to give you a brief background of this application, that October 29, 2019, the Committee of Adjustment granted a provisional consent approval for this property. The key condition was the zoning bylaw amendment was the key condition of this application, and the purpose of the proposed zoning bylaw amendment is to satisfy a condition to provisional approval of consent application as granted by a Committee of Adjustment in October 2019, and which was revised on October 2020 with the inclusion of the owner will obtain the access permit from the township. So the subject property is located within the Beverly northern area, and the property is, as I mentioned, municipally known as 1904 Clyde Road. The property is approximately 20 hectare in size, with corresponding lot frontage of 213 meter on Clyde Road, as you can see on the map. The surrounding land uses are agriculture and rural residential in nature. As you can see, the subject property is located at the east side of the Clyde settlement. The property is serviced by private well and septic system. If you can see this map, the currently subject property consists of a small scale agriculture, a single detached dwelling unit, and environmental heritage features regulated by the GRCA. So that environmental features include like woodland, wetland, and also the floodplain area as well. Staff reviewed the provincial, regional, and township statutory plans. When we see the provincial policy documents, so that state that the natural heritage, natural features are an area shall be protected for long term, and permitting and facilitating all housing options to meet the projected requirement of the current and future residents. And when you see the Greater Golden Horseshoe Plan, and also talk about the same thing to support the environmental and agriculture protection and conservation objective of this plan. And also it states that support additional residential units housing to meet projected needs of the current and future residential. As I mentioned, the northern portion of the property is contains environmental heritage features, so that policy applied to that. When we reviewed the regional official plan and township official plan that support the consent application, which was granted by the Committee of Adjustment, and also it's also support to align with the proposed zoning bylaw amendment application as well. So when we read the regional official plan policy or the township official policy, that state that where a consent application has been submitted for a new rural residential lot within the Beverly northern and southern area, this property is in northern area of the township prior to December 22nd, 2010. The date of the approval of the region official plan by the province, such applications, together with any associated existing or future zone change application required to permit consideration of the new rural residential lot, will be continued and processed and finally disposed of in accordance with the all applicable policy of the regional official plan, which was in 1995. So this the proposed zoning bylaw amendment application and the consent application granted by the Committee of Adjustment that align with this policy. So as you can see on the zoning bylaw map, the subject property currently zoned as Zone 1 Agriculture with exception 20.1.114, which specify the property must have minimum lot width 201 meter and a minimum lot area of 6 hectare. So the proposed application, zoning bylaw amendment application proposing to recognize a reduced lot width and lot area. Number 2, reduce lot width of the retained parcel. Number 3, rezone the northern portion of the property from agriculture to environmental production area, which I will discuss next slide. As I mentioned, the purpose of the proposed zoning bylaw amendment is to satisfy the condition to provisional consent approval application as granted by the Committee of Adjustment. So when we see that what was the key condition, that state that the zoning bylaw amendment to be applied for an approved to recognize the reduced width and lot size as part of the zoning bylaw amendment, natural features plus a minimum buffer 30 meter, and the regulated floodplain must be zoned as an environmental protection. So as you can see on the map, the northern portion of the property is proposed to be zoned from the Zone 1 Agriculture to Zone 12A, which is environmental protection area. So when you see the existing bylaw requirements, so the existing bylaw exception 20.114 that required the lot width of 201 meter. And when we see the severed lot that proposed a lot width 60 meter, and the retained lot width is 53 meters. And when you see the lot area, the zoning bylaw, the existing bylaw required 6 hectare, which is 14.82 acres, and the lot area is the severed lot proposed for 0.6 hectare, which is 1.5 acres. And as I mentioned earlier, that number 3, the zoning bylaw amendment proposed to rezone the northern portion of the property from zone 1 agriculture to environmental protection to protect and preserve the natural environment, which is regulated under the GRCA, such as I mentioned, the woodlot and the wetland and the floodplain as well. So this is the ideal map of that land, which and you can see the southwest portion of the properties was severed at the time in 2020 October 22 era, and you can see the remaining parcel retained lot is 19.4 hectare and the severed lot is 0.6 hectare. So staff also circulated the notice of public meeting to adjacent property owners. So the staff didn't receive any comments and concern from any member of the public. Staff also circulated the submission package to agencies and department. Regional municipality of Waterloo expressed no concerns, and Enbridge Gas, they mentioned that they does not have service line running within the area, which may or may not be affected by the proposed severance and rezoning. So they don't have any concern as well. And when we see the Waterloo Catholic District School Board, Grand River Conservation Authority, they also expressed no concern. Our Public Works Department, they mentioned that the applicant must obtain an entrance permit of the new lot. So when I shared the map that the proposed, the severed lot is beyond the heritage environmental features. So that's why the GRCA don't have any concern. So staff, in consideration of the future report on the merit of the application, will be considering the matter, such as all comments and correspondence received during the consideration process, the matter, the effect of the proposed development on matter of provincial interest, such as protecting the diversity and connectivity of the natural features and areas, protecting prime agriculture land for long-term agricultural uses, and support rural development that is compatible with the existing landscape. So staff will also consider the whether the proposed development align with the official plan and zoning bylaw as well. The staff will also consider the suitability of land for the purposes of which the land are to be rezoned and severed, including the dimension, shape of the property lot. So staff will also consider the protection, preservation of the natural environment and traffic generated by the surrounding land use and proposed development, inclusive of driveway access on the Clyde Road. Staff will also consider the proposed amendment to the site-specific exception is suitable for the subject lands and the use of the site-specific provision to address the current and future intended use of the subject lands. Thanks, Madam Mayor.
Would the applicant like to say anything? Nicolette?
Good evening, Mayor Foxton and members of council. My name is Nicolette Van Ooyen, and I'm here on behalf of our client, Don Graham, together with Trevor Hawkins from MHBC Planning. Our client owns the property at 1904 Clyde Road, just east of the village of Clyde. I'm not sure if we had a little presentation, but I'll just run through it. I don't know if Shahid is sharing that. Anyhow, as Shahid mentioned in his presentation, the zoning bylaw amendment is required as a condition of consent application to recognize reduced lot widths and areas required for both the severed and retained parcels. The consent application is subject to Beverly policies in section 6. So if we can go to the next slide, 6.E.15 of the regional official plan, which permits the consent application to be considered under the previous official plan, regional official plan of 1995. The lands are zoned Zone 1 agriculture and are subject to exemption 20.1.114, which requires a minimum lot width of 201 meters and a minimum lot area of 6 hectares. So if we can just go up one slide, just show that's it. So you can see the lot there in the southwest corner of the subject lands. Next slide, please. So as Shahid went through it, the zoning bylaw amendment is a condition of the consent to recognize the deficient lot width and area for the severed lands to the tune of 60 meters and 0.6 hectares, and to recognize a deficient lot width for the retained lands of 150 meters rather than the required 201 meters. In addition, the rezoning will rezone the environmental features to a more protective environmental protection 1 zone. Next slide, please. As you can see here on the zoning bylaw, proposed zoning bylaw amendment mapping. Next slide, please. So by way of summary, the zoning bylaw amendment proposes to satisfy a condition of a consent application previously approved by the Committee of Adjustment and recommended by township staff. It's to be noted that similar sized lots exist in the rural landscape in the surrounding area. The consent application was submitted prior to the approval of the new regional official plan and is subject to specific Beverly area policies which permit the severance. The consent and zoning bylaw amendment applications satisfy all the policies in the regional and township official plans regarding lot creation in the Beverly area. The zoning bylaw amendment proposes to rezone the rear portion of the lands to a more protective environmental protection zone, consistent with regional and township official plans and the provincial policy statement. So that is the extent of my presentation. We are here to answer any questions. And again, thank you, Shahid, for your comprehensive presentation previously.
Is there any other one from the public wishing to speak on this? Seeing none, any member of council will have any comments? CEO McNeely, are they, I believe Ms. Van Owen talked about the Beverly Amendment. Is that what she's addressing in this? And I thought we had cleared up all the Beverly Amendment ones and gave the last kick of the can a couple of years ago, because the province stated the Beverly Amendment ended at a certain date and we got an extension. Could you please clarify for me, please? And you're on mute.
Madam Mayor, in 2019, we dealt with the last of the Beverly consent applications. This property at 1904 Clyde Road was one of those that was dealt with in 2019. There was a minor adjustment in terms of a condition to provisional approval entertained by the Committee of Adjustment in October of 2020. It did not in any manner change the configuration of the proposed severed lot or retained lot. We were close to a lapsing provision, and so a minor condition was put in requiring a driveway permit, which then extended the life of the consent application so that the owner could pursue the zoning application, which is in front of council tonight. This is one of the very last applications to be dealt with in the Beverly area, and those aspects will be then wound down, and no further consents will be eligible because we've obviously well exceeded the 2010 grandfathering window.
Thank you, CEO McNeely. Councillor Gillespie.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I was very surprised to see this because I thought we had already passed this severance in October of 2020. So I was very surprised to see it come back again. So I hope that it will just pass now and be done. It seems
So,
that
Madam
we've
Mayor-
gone over the same thing several times. I don't know.
CEO
Madam
McNeely.
Mayor, the reason it's before council tonight is because there were conditions that were imposed on the original consent,
Who's speaking? Oh, you can't, CEO McNeely. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
which included properly recognizing the limits of the key natural heritage features comprised of the woodlands, wetland, and riverine features that are portions of the property, as well as the consent application changed the road frontage and lot area that was previously enshrined on the property. And so those new measured areas had to be properly captured in the zoning bylaw. This is an implementing aspect associated with the original consent applications considered by the Committee of Adjustment in 2019 and 2020.
Thank you, CEO McNeely, for clarifying. So basically, this is a cleanup. All right. Any other questions, councillors? Can I have the motion, please?
Moved by Councillor McCreary, seconded by Councillor Ossner, that report number PD 39-2021 be received, and that all comments and correspondence received through the consultation process be returned to staff for further consideration in a future report to council on the disposition of this matter. Mayor Foxton,
Yes.
Councillor Rollman,
Yes.
Councillor Ossner,
Yes.
Councillor McCreary,
Yes.
Councillor Gillespie,
Yes.
that carries.
Thank you. And now we have a confirmatory bylaw, please.
So moved by Councillor Gillespie, seconded by Councillor Rollman, that bylaw number 3264-21, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council on June 29th, 2021, be read a first, second, and third time, and be finally passed, signed, and sealed by the mayor and clerk. Mayor Foxton,
Yes.
Councillor Rollman,
Yes.
Councillor Ossner,
Yes.
Councillor McCreary,
Yes.
Councillor Gillespie,
Yes.
that carries.
Thank you. And can I have the confirmatory adjournment, please?
Yes, so moved by Councillor McCreary, seconded by Councillor Ossner, that whereas business before this public council meeting has been completed at 8:02 p.m. And be it resolved, this meeting adjourns and meets again on June 4th. Sorry, that's on
July.
on July 12th at 6 p.m. for a council meeting. Mayor Foxton,
Yes.
Councillor Rollman,
Yes.
Councillor Ossner,
Yes.
Councillor McCreary,
Yes.
Councillor Gillespie,
Yes.
that carries.
Thank you, everyone. And we will be talking to you all later.